Good evening. I am Stephanie Officer. President Trump gearing up to hold the first meeting of his Board of Peace, which was established to help with the rebuilding phase in Gaza.
A copy of the invitation to attend the first meeting was sent late Friday to invited participants. And it says the gathering will be held at the U.S. Institute of Peace, now called the Donald J. Trump U.S. Institute of Peace. The Trump administration seized the facility last year and fired almost all of its staff. The Board of Peace was first seen as a group that would focus on ending the Israel-Hamas war, but Trump says it'll also address other global crises. Donna Warder, Washington.
Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban said today he will attend that meeting. It's not yet known which other nations were invited or how many will show up. News time, 8:31. Let's get you where you need to go. Patty Bendina.
Well, here's what you need to know about the bridges and tunnels. The East River crossings, all looking good. The Hudson River crossings, George Washington Bridge inbound, that is wide open. There was an earlier accident outbound on the lower level sitting in the New Jersey side, Fort Lee. That is now out of the way. All the lanes have been reopened, so that earlier delay is clearing out. The Link and the Holland Tunnel, they're both running smoothly. In Brooklyn, there was also an earlier accident on the Gowanus westbound just past 6th Avenue. That is cleared out as well. We are still seeing some delays, though, on the BQE westbound from McGinnis Boulevard on and off over towards the Manhattan Bridge. And then in Queens, the Cross Island northbound still heavy from the Southern State up to Hempstead Avenue. Both directions of the Van Wyck, heavy between Linden and Atlantic Avenue. And then in Manhattan, there is an accident on the FDR northbound at 54th Street that has the left lane blocked. And in New Jersey, a crash on the Garden State Parkway southbound at exit 129. That's in Woodbridge with the right lane knocked out. Patty Bendina, 1010 wins on 92.3 FM.
Now let's get a check of that official AccuWeather forecast. Here is meteorologist John Feerick.
Dangerous, potentially life-threatening cold out there for tonight. If you do absolutely need to be outside, bundle up from head to toe. We're down to 2 in Midtown. That would be the coldest night in 7 years. Real feels down near 20 below much of the time when you factor in the wind, and blustery, bitterly cold still for tomorrow. Some sun with the high only 17. Real feels still well below zero. Diminishing wind tomorrow night at 8 in Midtown. Still low single digits in a lot of suburbs. Clouds, some sun for Monday. Not as harsh with less wind. Back up to 29. And we're into the mid-30s on Tuesday, and we stay in the 30s on Wednesday. I'm AccuWeather meteorologist John Feerick on New York's weather station, 1010 Winds at 92.3 FM.
The frigid cold not stopping a local human services group from lending a helping hand.
The outreach team at Samaritan Daytop Village is braving the freezing cold to bring food and warming kits to people who are on the street. The teams are made up entirely of people who formerly needed the services themselves, like Taylor, who says this work means a lot to him.
I come from, a family that's struggled with addiction, so this is my opportunity to give it back.
And they don't just give out needed items. Team leader Wilbert Del Carmen says they also try to bring people indoors.
If you don't want these services, at least come to a center where you will be warm.
The program has now served more than 4,000 people in Queens and the Bronx. Linda Lopez, 1010 Wins at 92.3 FM.
Thousands of cold-stunned iguanas have been euthanized in Florida. State wildlife officials say more than 5,000 invasive green iguanas were killed after freezing temps caused those reptiles to fall from trees. The state authorized an emergency 2-day roundup as temperatures dip below levels the tropical lizards can survive. Officials say the species damages infrastructure and native plants, and the cold snap provided a rare chance to reduce those numbers. Meanwhile, the freeze is expected to cause up to $15 billion in economic damage, mostly in the citrus industry. Well, we are less than 24 hours away from Super Bowl 60, and New Yorkers have been placing their bets between the Seahawks and the Pats.
She's got grit and she knows her stuff. Erica's showing out for the ladies.
Oh my God, it's my favorite day of the year. Food, action, games, it's the best. And the commercials, of course.
Hey, you'd be surprised. Some folks have no clue who's playing, but not Big E.
Are you asking me that? I know more than anyone. New England and the Seattle Seahawks.
And now let's talk bets.
I'm gonna root for Seattle. I'm going to root for Darnold. I think he has a great story going from team to team. Defense has been playing great all year. I think he's going to show up. I think it's going to be a good game. Maybe low scoring, but it's going to be a good game.
I think it's time for a career switch, Erica. I heard ESPN's hiring. Amanda Alexander, 10-10 wins on 92.3 FM at Gourmet Grill.
The American Gaming Association expects Americans to put down a record $1.8 billion on Super Bowl bets. The Seattle Seahawks are 4.5-point favorites. Forgive me if I messed that up. I'm not quite a bettor. It's news time. 8:37, 10-10 Wins Entertainment News is next, and in it we'll tell you which longtime pop singer is going on tour.
The News Watch never stops. This is 10-10 Wins on 92.3 FM. You give us 22 minutes, we'll give you the world.
Good evening. 7 little degrees outside, 8:40 on your Saturday, February 7th. I'm Stephanie Officer. Here's what's happening. The cold outside is no joke. AccuWeather Real Feels put us at -19 at this moment. We'll start you off with AccuWeather. Tomorrow marks 1 week since Nancy Guthrie has been missing.
We believe at least 7 of the 9 units he's using are supposed to be rent stabilized.
A rental scam comes to city hotels. Drunk driver under arrest. We'll tell you what Bad Bunny is going to get up to at the Super Bowl. And speaking of, tomorrow the Patriots face off against the Seahawks in Super Bowl 60 from California. 7 degrees, mostly cloudy skies. Feels like -19 in Midtown. What a paradise. What's news time, 8:41? Let's get you where you need to go. Patty Bendina.
Thanks, Stephanie. Well, in New Jersey, there is a crash on the Garden State Parkway southbound at exit 129 that's in Woodbridge. Has the right lane knocked out, causing some slow traffic through there. And then in Manhattan, there's also a crash on the Henry Hudson northbound right at West 158th Street. That is you backed up to 145th. In Queens, the Van Wyck still delayed both directions between Linden Boulevard and Atlantic. And then still some delays in Brooklyn on the BQE westbound from the Manhattan Bridge over to Atlantic and then eastbound from the Gowanus up towards the Brooklyn Bridge. Now, here's what you need to know about the bridges and tunnels. The Brooklyn Bridge, little heavy heading into Brooklyn. You may want to take the Manhattan or the Williamsburg bridges around it. And then the Hudson River crossings, the George, wide open both directions. The Cross Bronx westbound, a little delayed between the Major Deegan and Riverside Drive, but no problems with the Lincoln Tunnel, the Holland Tunnel. They're both running smoothly. And here's what we see on Long Island's Big Three. It's looking good with the LIE, the Northern State, and the Southern State. Patty Bendina, 10-10 Wins on 92.3 FM.
And we here at 10-10 Winds have been out in this hellish weather, so you do not have to be AccuWeather meteorologist John Ferrick.
The coldest air of the season thus far plunging into the tri-state area tonight. We're going to have actual lows in the low single digits. If we get down to 2 in Central Park, that would be the coldest night in 7 years. Real feels are going to be down between 10 and 20 below when you factor in the wind. So just downright dangerous cold out there. Tomorrow only rebounding into the upper teens, but real feels still well below 0. Then not as harsh. It'll feel a little bit better Monday and Tuesday.
Mayor Zoran Mamdani is warning New Yorkers about the lethal conditions this extreme cold will bring us this weekend.
The best thing to do with the wind, with the temperature, with the weather that we're talking about is to stay inside. I will encourage you, if you have to leave your home, to make sure that you are fully and properly clothed. But frankly, with this kind of weather, there just simply isn't enough clothing to keep you warm when you're outside for a sustained period of time.
Yeah, I can confirm. Well, a man was stabbed and slashed near a Brooklyn apartment building this morning, leaving a blood trail to a deli a few blocks away. The 39-year-old man was stabbed in the abdomen and slashed in the face by his attacker with an unknown object around 10:30 this morning outside the NYCHA Glenwood houses. That's at Avenue H and East 58th Street in Flatlands. EMS took the victim to Kings County Hospital, where he's in stable condition. No arrests yet. Cops are still searching for that attacker. To Queens, where a man is in custody after he allegedly impersonated a cop on Long Island. Wilfredo Roldos allegedly walked up to 2 men on Beach 2nd Street saying they broke his car window. Roldos allegedly told those guys he was a cop and pointed to a badge hanging around his neck and what looked like a gun. Police arrested Roldos, the real police, a few blocks away at an apartment building on Seagirt Avenue. They recovered a pepper ball gun at the scene. He was slapped with a host of charges, including criminal impersonation. Tonight marks 1 week since Nancy Guthrie was last seen after she was dropped off at home following a visit to her daughter's place nearby. Investigators were returning to that house after a new message came in.
The station said it contains something the senders seem to think will prove to investigators they're the same people who sent the first note, the one that mentioned Nancy Guthrie's Apple Watch and possible damage at her home. demanded Bitcoin and included 2 deadlines. The first has come and gone. The second is in just 2 days. The FBI and Pima County Sheriff's Department said investigators are actively inspecting the information provided in the message for its authenticity.
Correspondent Aaron Katursky.
We received your message, and we understand. We beg you now to return our mother to us so that we can celebrate with her. This is the only way we will have peace. This is very valuable to us, and we will pay.
That is Savannah Guthrie on Instagram, appearing with her siblings once again this afternoon, sharing another message with her mother's kidnapper, this time saying she and her family will pay for Nancy Guthrie's safe return. It's news time, 8:45. On Wednesday, the Washington Post laid off a third of its staff, cutting over 300 journalists from the paper. Today, publisher Will Lewis says he's stepping down. In a brief note to staff, Lewis said he felt this was the right time to do so. He ended by saying, quote, "During my tenure, difficult decisions have been taken in order to ensure the sustainable future of the Post so it can for many years ahead publish high-quality, nonpartisan news to millions of customers each day." Lewis was brought in to lead the Post by the paper's owner, Jeff Bezos, at the beginning of 2024. Several reports say the Post staff hadn't seen or heard from Lewis after the layoff. Lewis will be succeeded by Jeff D'Onofrio, the former chief financial officer of the paper. Federal judge has ordered the release of a man swept up during a chaotic Chinatown immigration raid last fall, ruling ICE failed to follow its own rules and criticizing the agency's claim of broad stop and detain authority. The ruling stems from an ICE operation along Canal Street last October when 24 federal agents showed up and restrained several people. Protesters and other bystanders soon started clashing with law enforcement officials. At least 4 people were arrested, among them Mamadou Ndoye, a Malian national who'd been living in the U.S. for more than 15 years. It can be hard to escape scams in this city, and the landlord is accused of offering rent-stabilized apartments as hotel rooms.
The goal isn't to put anyone in jail.
The goal of this litigation is to return these units to rent-stabilized tenants.
That's Christian Klosner, the city special enforcement exec director. He's talking about Mark David Militana, a landlord that's been using his brownstones to beat the system.
We believe at least 7 of the 9 units he's using as short-term rentals are supposed to be rent-stabilized.
See, it was tenants that flagged Militana. They've been subjected to short-term renters coming and going whenever. So the city's taking him to court.
One of the things we're seeking is a restraining order, a court order directing him to stop the illegal activity,
as well as a receiver that'll take control of the properties and fines that could exceed $4 million. Amanda Alexander, 1010 Wins on 92.3 FM.
An alleged drunk driver under arrest after hitting 2 people in the Bronx late last night. Happened around 11 p.m. Police say the 42-year-old was driving along East Tremont Avenue when he drove up onto the sidewalk and crashed into an 18-year-old woman and 21-year-old man. Now, before he stopped, that driver also rammed into a Chinese restaurant and bar. Both victims were taken to the hospital. They're expected to recover. Police arrested the driver at the scene. He's been hit with the DWI. In Ukraine, new Russian strikes targeting the country's energy sector. Ukraine says Russia launched over 400 drones and nearly 40 missiles in the attack.
The country's infrastructure targeted for a second time since January, and people there are already enduring extremely cold weather, cold winter temperatures, many with no basic services as a result of these attacks. Officials reducing the power output because of damage to substations in various parts of the country. And people in some areas are left with no water and no heat.
Now, Ukrainian officials say at least 1 person was killed in that attack. That was Marcus Moore with that report. An Ohio man is facing some serious charges after he allegedly threatened to kill Vice President J.D. Vance. Earlier last month, Shannon Mathery said, quote, "I am going to find out where he," meaning the vice president, "is going to be and use my M14 automatic gun and kill him." They did not specify where or when that threat was made. In addition to the charge for threatening Vance, investigators also found images of child abuse on his phone. He's now facing up to 20 years behind bars for those charges. For the threats, Mathery could get a max of a 5-year sentence. Mathery's lawyer says his health challenges make it unlikely Mathery would ever follow through on his threat. He's due back in court Wednesday. It's news time, 8:50. Traffic and AccuWeather a minute away from you on 1010 Wins. We can't wait to see what Bad Bunny's going to get up to during tomorrow's Super Bowl halftime show. We'll tell you about that, but first... Winds News Time 8:51. Let's get you where you need to go, Patty Bendina.
The MTA bridges, there is a ban on all empty tractor trailers. That's due to the high winds for the Throgs Neck, the Whitestone, RFK, and Verrazano bridges. Keep that in mind. In New Jersey, we have a couple of problems. There is a crash on the Garden State Parkway southbound at exit 129. That's in Woodbridge. That has the right lane knocked out. And then on the Garden State Parkway northbound, local lanes just north of exit 124. That's Main Street in Sayreville. It's also a wreck that has the left lane shut down. In Manhattan, there's a crash on the Henry Hudson northbound at West 158th Street. That has you backing up to 145th Street. In Queens, we're still seeing delays on the Van Wyck northbound from Linden Boulevard up to Atlantic Avenue. And then in Brooklyn, the BQE westbound still slow from Flushing to Atlantic, eastbound from the Gowanus up to the Brooklyn Bridge. And here's what you need to know about the bridges and tunnels. The Brooklyn Bridge is cleared out, no problems there. The Hudson River crossings, the George Washington Bridge completely wide open, and the Lincoln and the Holland Tunnel are both running smoothly. Patty Bendita, 1010 Winds on 92.3 FM.
Now let's get into your official 1010 Winds AccuWeather forecast. Guess what? It's very cold. Meteorologist John Vierick.
The extreme cold warning is still in effect, runs through midday tomorrow. Wind advisory in effect through midnight for gusts 40 to 50 miles per hour, bringing those real feels down to around 20 below zero. Just dangerous to be outside. We're down to 2 for an actual low in Midtown. Outlying spots below zero. Blustery, bitterly cold for tomorrow. We'll have some sun, but it's not going to do anything. The high just 17. Real feels still well below zero. And then a little bit less wind tomorrow night. Down to 8 in Midtown. Monday won't be as harsh. Clouds, some sun up to 29. And then we're back into the 30s with some sun Tuesday and Wednesday. I'm AccuWeather meteorologist John Vierick on New York's weather station, 1010 Winds on 92.3 FM.
A new chapter in music history is unfolding as a museum dedicated to hip-hop is set to open in the very place where the genre was born.
The sound that took the world by storm.
Hip-hop is black culture, and now it has become really, a culture that represents everybody.
Yeah, Rocky Bucano's seen the birth and growth of hip-hop, and he says he won't let it die.
We want to make sure that no history gets erased.
He's the founder and CEO of the Hip Hop Museum, a multi-million-dollar project opening this December.
Now that hip-hop finally has its own home, we can celebrate hip-hop for what it is right here at the home of hip-hop in the Bronx.
To Rocky, hip-hop is more than music. It's an extension and expression of the Black experience. For Black History Month, Amanda Alexander, 1010 Winds on 92.3 FM.
Winds News Time 8:56. Now Bloomberg Money Watch.
From its founding in 1931, automaker Porsche has operated with a swagger.
Porsche, there is no substitute.
High-end sports cars for high-end sports car enthusiasts.
You made us who we are, and you always will.
But there may be a tweak to that following a tough stretch for the brand.
You have the tariffs in the United States that are hitting them quite hard, and then you recently also had the collapse of the Chinese market.
Bloomberg reporter Monica Raymond, hitting hardest the brand's aggressive bet on electric vehicles that have proven far less popular than hoped.
New CEO Michael Leiter is in a position where he's got a tighter budget, and he has to pick and choose where it makes sense for Porsche to spend its money on its upcoming products.
Porsche is considering pulling the plug on a planned line of electric Boxster and Cayman models as the company faces a question of identity.
They really have to focus on what their product strategy is.
Specifically, do they try to sell cars for a lot or try to sell a lot of cars? Amanda Rodin, Bloomberg Money Watch, 1010 Winds at 92.3 FM.
WINS, WINS FM in HD1 New York. Always live on the free Odyssey app.
More people get their news from 1010 Winds than from any other radio station in the nation. James Boyce, it's our service aide. Gary Souter at the editor's desk. I am Stephanie Officer.
All news, all the time. This is 1010 Winds on 92.3 FM, New York.
Good evening. We are down to 7 degrees at 9 o'clock. Real feel, minus 20. I'm Bud Mishkin. Here's what's happening.
This is some of the coldest weather that our city has seen.
Mayor Mamdani on the frigid and dangerous cold. We'll have AccuWeather in a minute. Washington Post CEO and publisher Will Lewis is out only days after the layoff of some 300 of the Post's journalists. Federal judge orders the release of a man swept up in an ICE raid in Chinatown last October. The New York Times is reporting that FBI Director Kash Patel and several other senior officials ordered a local prosecutor and FBI agents to stop investigating the fatal shooting of Renee Good in Minneapolis. And Film at Lincoln Center prepares a retrospective on the great career of the great Diane Keaton. Sports, day one, the first full day of competition at the Olympics is in the books. Locally, the Nets beat Washington. Wins News Time 9:01. Let's get you where you need to go with Patty Bendina.
And we're going to start out in New Jersey. There's a wreck on the Garden State Parkway northbound. It's in the local lanes just north of exit 124. That's for Main Street in Sayreville. That has the left lane knocked out. And then farther north, there's also some debris blocking a lane on the Garden State Parkway northbound entrance ramp to exit 165. That's Ridgewood Avenue and Paramus. Be careful through that area. In Manhattan, they're still working on a crash on the Henry Hudson northbound at West 158th Street. Traffic is backed up to 145th, and then the FDR southbound, that is still sluggish from right around 23rd Street as you make your way down towards Houston. In Queens, the Van Wyck delayed northbound from Linden Boulevard up to Atlantic, and then in Brooklyn, BQE westbound still slow from Flushing to Atlantic, and then eastbound from the Gowanus up towards the Brooklyn Bridge. Here's what you need to know about the bridges and tunnels. The East River crossings are looking good. The Hudson River crossings, the George, the Lincoln, the Holland, completely wide open. And here's what we see on Long Island's Big Three. Looking good for the LIE, the Northern State, and the Southern State. Patty Bendina, 1010 wins on 92.3 FM.
Brutally cold temperatures tonight. The real feel? Don't ask. Let's get the latest from AccuWeather's John Feerick.
Some of the coldest air in years plunging into the Tri-State area. We're going to have actual low temperatures tonight down into the low single digits. Real feels are going to be down near 20 below much of the time when you factor in the wind gusting to 40 miles per hour. Just downright dangerous to be outside. And if you're going to be outside at all, you're going to make sure you're bundled up from head to toe. You don't have any exposed skin. Frostbite could occur very quickly. Tomorrow's not much better. Real feels still well below zero. And then things improve a little bit Monday and Tuesday.
The mayor calls these conditions lethal.
The safest thing to do is to be inside. Today, tomorrow, we are seeing temperatures the likes of which our city has not seen for quite some time. And what may seem like a fun outdoor excursion in this kind of weather is something that could be quite dangerous.
There have been 17 deaths on the streets of New York since this cold wave began last month. The fallout continues from this week's layoff of 30% of the staff of the Washington Post, more than 300 journalists. The CEO and publisher of the Washington Post, Will Lewis, is out. Lewis says he made the decision, quote, in order to ensure the sustainable future of the Post. He'll be succeeded by the chief financial officer at the Post, Jeff Donofrio. Lewis sent an email to staff saying in part about the Post's owner, Jeff Bezos, quote, the institution could not have a better owner. Bezos hired Lewis in 2024 ostensibly to transform the Post, the Washington Post, and reverse years of financial losses. A federal judge is ordering the release of a man detained in an immigration raid in Chinatown last fall. U.S. District Judge Vernon Broderick ruled that ICE did not follow its own rules. 24 federal agents started a sweep of Chinatown last October. Protesters and bystanders soon began to clash with ICE. At least 4 people were arrested, including Mamadou Bakoum Ndoye of Mali. He's been living here for more than 15 years. There had been a final order of removal for him, but he'd been allowed to stay under a federal order of supervision. ICE revoked that order and jailed him. The judge ruled the decision to revoke Ndoye's supervision came from a low-level officer without proper authority, defying ICE's own rules, that only certain senior officials are allowed to revoke an order of supervision. When is an apartment building a hotel is an apartment building?
Now he's facing fines that could exceed $4 million. Christian Klosner explains he's the city's special enforcement exec director.
He got booted off the major booking services, and he responded by setting up his own proprietary website.
We're talking about Mark David Militano, a landlord that's allegedly been using his brownstones for unregistered short-term rentals.
We believe at least 7 of the 9 units he's using are supposed to be rent stabilized.
Some tenants say they've been subjected to
a stream of short-term renters who are coming at different hours, asking the permanent tenants questions about what's wrong with the Wi-Fi, what's wrong with the heat.
In a statement, Mayor Mamdani says his administration to hold bad actors accountable. Amanda Alexander, 1010 wins on 92.3 FM.
Most sports attention this weekend is understandably on the Super Bowl and the Olympics. But we could see a little bit of college basketball history tomorrow night, history that involves a New York team. NYU will play at Carnegie Mellon tomorrow night. Ordinarily, that might not be the biggest of sports news. But If the NYU women win tomorrow night, that will mean 82 victories in a row, the most ever by a school in Division III. NYU beat Case Western University last night to tie the record set by Washington University of St. Louis, known to the locals as WashU, from 1998 to 2001. Also tomorrow night, apparently a football game of some note.
The New England Patriots get ready to take on the Seattle Seahawks in Super Bowl 60. The Patriots, they're looking to make history by becoming the first NFL team with 7 Super Bowl wins. The Seahawks, with 1 championship under their belt, hoping to avenge their heartbreaking loss to New England in 2015. And with a packed crowd at Levi's Stadium, security will be extra tight and on high alert.
It's correspondent Whit Johnson. Some Patriots fans have been talking about the Super Bowl drought, since their franchise has not won a Super Bowl since 2019. Some Jets fans have a response to that talk about a drought, a response that I will not say here. The 2026 federal funding package that passed into law this past week includes $632,000 for the organization Friends of Firefighters for its FDNY mental health and wellness programming. It also includes full funding of the World Trade Center health program. Senator Gillibrand in Brooklyn today.
I sit down with firefighters regularly. I sit down with our first responders regularly. And they have told me over and over again that the challenges for meeting the needs of this community are real.
The World Trade Center health program was established in 2011 as part of the James Zadroga 9/11 Health and Compensation Act. We have 7 degrees right now in Midtown. The real feels are minus 20. We'll get down to a low of 4 overnight. Traffic in the full AccuWeather forecast next. President Trump says he will not apologize for the social media post ending with pictures of Barack and Michelle Obama appearing as apes. We'll tell you about that, but first, Wins News Time, 9/11. Let's get you where you need to go. Patty Bendine.
Well, in Manhattan, we're still dealing with a crash on the Henry Hudson northbound. It's at West 158th Street. Traffic is backed up to 145th, so you may want to take Riverside Drive or Broadway to get around it. The FDR southbound is still sluggish from 23rd down towards Houston Street. In New Jersey, there's a wreck on the Garden State Parkway northbound. It's in the local lanes just north of exit 124. That's for Main Street in Sayreville. It has the left lane blocked, and then farther north, there is some debris blocking a lane on the Garden State Parkway northbound entrance ramp to exit 165. That's for Ridgewood Avenue in Paramus. So just be careful through that area. In Queens, the Van Wyck still slow from Linden Boulevard up towards Atlantic. That's northbound. And then in Brooklyn, the BQE eastbound, westbound is slow from Flushing Avenue to Atlantic, and then eastbound from the Gowanus up towards the Brooklyn Bridge. Here's what you need to know about the bridges and tunnels. No problems with the East River crossings. They're looking good. The George, the Lincoln, the Holland, they are all running smoothly. And here's what we see on Long Island's Big Three. It's wide open on the LIE, the northern state, and the southern state. Patty Bendina, 1010 Wins on 92.3 FM.
Now let's get a check of the AccuWeather forecast, sponsored by Petro Home Services. Here's meteorologist John Fear.
Extreme cold warning in effect. Wind advisory also in effect. Winds gusting 40 to 50 miles per hour tonight, bringing real feels down to around 20 below zero. Just downright dangerous cold. Actual low 2 in Midtown. And blustery, bitterly cold for tomorrow, despite some sun, high 17. Real feels still well below zero. Then the wind will diminish tomorrow night. Mostly clear, still frigid down to 8 in Midtown. And then not as harsh on Monday. Clouds and sunshine, a high 29. And we're back into the 30s with some sunshine as we head into Tuesday and Wednesday. I'm AccuWeather meteorologist John Feerick on New York's weather station, 1010 Winds on 92.3 FM.
President Trump says he will not apologize for a post on his Truth Social platform. The post ends with pictures of Barack and Michelle Obama appearing as apes. The White House claims it was the work of a low-level staffer.
I am, by the way, the least racist president you've had in a long time.
President Trump's controversial late-night video post on Thursday was about alleged voter fraud and just over a minute long.
I liked the beginning. I saw it and just passed it on. And I guess probably nobody reviewed the end of it because what I saw at the beginning was really, really strong.
Correspondent Willie James Inman. Among the critics of the video, the Black Conservative Federation, a group with close ties to the president. The group issued a statement saying, quote, depicting black public figures in a dehumanizing manner, particularly imagery historically used to demean black Americans, is unacceptable, offensive, and indefensible. Savannah Guthrie and her siblings took to Instagram today to share another message with the kidnappers of their mother.
We received your message, and we understand. We beg you now to return our mother to us so that we can celebrate with her. This is the only way we will have peace. This is very valuable to us, and we will pay.
It's been a week since the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie.
Investigators have been reviewing a new message about the 84-year-old grandmother received by a local television station. An earlier, still unverified message included a ransom demand and a Monday deadline. And as word of that new message began to circulate, we saw detectives descending on the home. FBI agents spotted on the roof, and they were going door to door in the neighborhood. We saw them examining cameras that were mounted on the roof of Nancy Guthrie's house.
Correspondent Aaron Katursky, the home is just north of Tucson. New York Times is reporting that FBI Director Kash Patel and several other senior officials ordered a local prosecutor and FBI agents to stop investigating the fatal shooting of Renee Good in Minneapolis. Prosecutor Joseph Thompson reportedly emailed colleagues in the immediate aftermath of the shooting that a Minnesota state agency that specializes in investigating police shootings would team up with the FBI to investigate the shooting. But a few days later, they received orders to stop. The Times reports that Patel and other senior officials were worried that an investigation would contradict President Trump's claim that Renee Good, in the president's words, violently, willfully, and viciously ran over the ICE officer who shot her. Film at Lincoln Center is about to showcase work by the late Diane Keaton. It's a week-long showcase called Looking for Ms. Keaton, a play on the title of one of Keaton's most famous movies, Looking for Mr. Goodbar. Madeline Whittle is programmer at Film at Lincoln Center.
We wanted to take the opportunity to think through our favorite Diane Keaton performances and consider what story her body of work tells us about women of her generation.
Looking for Ms. Keaton is scheduled to run from February 13th to February 19th. From the soaring Unisphere at Flushing Meadows to the natural wonders of the Bronx Zoo, we are New York's all-news station.
All news, all the time. This is 1010 Wins on 92.3 FM. You give us 22 minutes, we'll give you the world.
Good evening. We have 7 degrees at 9:20. I'm Bud Mishkin. Here's what's happening. The cold is what's happening. It's bitter, it's dangerous. We'll have AccuWeather in a minute. Nancy Pelosi reportedly with an endorsement in the 12th congressional race in Manhattan, an endorsement of Jack Schlossberg, President Kennedy's grandson. A pattern of home robberies on Staten Island. The Trump administration sends out an invitation for the first scheduled meeting of what's called the President's Board of Peace. And Brad Arnold, the lead singer for the band 3 Doors Down, has died at the age of 47. Sports, first full day of competition in the books at the Olympics. Locally, the Nets beat Washington. Wins News Time, 9:21. Let's get you where you need to go with Patty Bendina.
Well, starting in Manhattan, there's a crash on the Henry Hudson northbound right at West 158th Street. That still has traffic backed up towards 145th. May want to get off and take Riverside Drive to get around that. In Queens, there's also an accident on the LIE westbound just before 164th. That has traffic backing up towards Utopia Parkway. And the Van Wyck, still a bit of a delay northbound from Liberty Avenue up towards Atlantic. And some delays in Brooklyn. The BQE westbound slow from Flushing to Atlantic, and then eastbound from the Gowanus up towards the Brooklyn Bridge. Here's what you need to know about the bridges and tunnels. No problems with the East River crossings. The Hudson River crossings, the George, the Lincoln, the Holland, they are all running smoothly. And here is what we see on Long Island's Big 3. The LIE, there is an accident eastbound right at Half Hollow Road that is sitting just before Deer Park, slowing traffic down through that area. But if you're heading out on the northern state or the southern state, those are both wide open. Patty Bendina, 1010 Wins on 92.3 FM.
It is seriously cold outside tonight, dangerously cold with the wind chill and the real feels in the minus 15, minus 20 area. Let's get AccuWeather's John Feerick with the latest.
Extreme cold warning is in effect. Wind advisory also in effect. We're going to have winds gusting to 40 miles per hour through the night, and that's going to bring those active with the real field temperatures down to near 20 below zero at times. So just dangerous cold out there. Make sure you're bundled up from head to toe. Frostbite could occur in a matter of minutes, and hypothermia also a concern for prolonged exposure to this cold. It stays brutally cold for tomorrow. Highs only in the upper teens. Real feel still well below zero. A little bit better on Monday.
Mayor Mamdani today on Staten Island about the cold weather.
As I speak to you here just on Staten Island, sanitation has melted more than 11 million tons of snow. This is all the work that city workers are doing in tandem with more than 550 outreach workers who are out there at all times of day to bring homeless New Yorkers inside.
There have been 17 deaths on the streets of New York since this cold wave began last month. Former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi usually does not make an endorsement in a New York campaign, but The Times is reporting that Pelosi will endorse Jack Schlossberg, the grandson of President Kennedy. He's one of many hopefuls vying to become the Democratic Party's nominee in the 12th congressional district that covers much of Manhattan. Pelosi said in a statement that The Times says it viewed that Schlossberg's candidacy, quote, will help Democrats win nationwide. Schlossberg is also the cousin of Health and Human Services Secretary RFK Jr. A Range Rover has been stolen on Staten Island in what police say is part of a home robbery pattern in the borough. Police are looking for 3 suspects responsible for at least 3 break-ins, which occurred on February 1st. Investigators say the trio of suspects first attempted to break into a home in New Dorp with a crowbar just after 2:30 in the morning. When that was unsuccessful, they moved on to a nearby home about 10 minutes later and pried open a window. And once inside, they found the Range Rover's key fob, and they drove off with the luxury SUV. After about 40 minutes, the suspects again used a crowbar to break open a home's back door, but were unsuccessful. No one was hurt in any of the robberies. The Jeffrey Epstein files will be in the spotlight Monday. Members of Congress have been given the green light by the Justice Department to start reviewing unredacted versions of more than 3 million pages of documents already released on the convicted sex offender. They can take notes on the documents but cannot make copies. Also Monday,
the House Oversight Committee will hear from Epstein's accomplice, Ghislaine Maxwell, who is scheduled to testify virtually from the prison where she is serving 20 years for sex trafficking. She is expected to take the fifth. The Republican-led committee has subpoenaed former President Bill Clinton and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton to testify behind closed doors.
Correspondent Jonathan Karl, the Clintons both called for their hearings to be public. Hillary Clinton is scheduled to testify on the 26th of this month, followed by the former president the next day.
This is Michael Barish of Barish & McGarry. When my client Mike's wife passed a few years ago, he never thought it had anything to do with her exposure to the 9/11 toxins. I'm so glad he finally connected the dots.
Barish & McGarry made it so easy for me to get all of the information that I would need for them to file a claim on my behalf.
Most non-responders still haven't realized that 69 cancers have been scientifically linked to the toxins. Civilians are entitled to the same benefits as responders. After all, everyone downtown was exposed to the same toxins, and not surprisingly, they're coming down with the same illnesses.
And if you lived or worked in that exposure area, you are doing you and your family a disservice by not calling Barish & McGarry. Let them get justice for you and your family.
It's not too late. Go to 911awards.com. That's 911awards with an S.com. 9/11 didn't end on 9/11. Barish & McGarry, lawyers for the 9/11 community.
7 degrees in Midtown, going down to a low overnight of 4. Now, Bloomberg Money Watch.
As the globe warms, ski resorts in Colorado and Utah, as well as state governments, are increasingly turning to cloud seeding to replenish snow on the slopes, as well as filling up drying reservoirs. Cloud seeding, which burns silver iodide into the sky, creating nuclei for water droplets to freeze and fall as snowflakes, has become a popular method to generate snow. While the idea of cloud seeding has been around since the 19th century, the process began being used in the 1960s. Senior correspondent for Bloomberg Green, Kyle Stock, tells us how safe the process is.
You could eat it. It would pass through your body. When it falls from the sky, the snow melts. It just goes in the soil where it occurs naturally anyways. So it appears to be safe.
One startup that is now the lead cloud seeding contractor for Utah is Rainmaker. Stock tells us how successful they've been.
This is really the first winter they've operated at scale, and they're getting paid $7.5 million by the state of Utah.
Rainmaker has mastered the cloud seeding process using a fleet of drones. I'm Dan Schwartzman, Bloomberg Money Watch on 1010 Wins on 92.3 FM.
1010 wins.
Gotta know what's happening in my city.
A news source that you trust. You're my favorite.
I think it's good to know what's going on in the world. 1010 wins.
On 92.3 FM.
Wins news time at the Tone, 9:30.
Good evening, I am Stephanie Officer. President Trump is gearing up to hold the first meeting of his Board of Peace, which was established to help with the rebuilding phase in Gaza.
A copy of the invitation to attend the first meeting was sent late Friday to invited participants. And it says the gathering will be held at the U.S. Institute of Peace, now called the Donald J. Trump U.S. Institute of Peace. The Trump administration seized the facility last year and fired almost all of its staff. The Board of Peace was first seen as a group that would focus on ending the Israel-Hamas war, but Trump says it'll also address other global crises. Donna Warder, Washington.
Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban said today he will attend the meeting. It is not known yet which nations were invited or how many will show up. Wednesday time, 9:31. Let's get you where you need to go. Patty Bendina.
Well, in Manhattan, there's a crash on the Henry Hudson northbound. It's right at West 158th Street. Traffic is backed up to 145th Street. You may want to take Riverside Drive or the Harlem River Drive to get around it. In Queens, there's also a wreck on the LIE westbound just before 164th Street. That has traffic backing up towards Utopia Parkway. And still some delays in Brooklyn on the BQE westbound from Flushing Avenue over towards Atlantic, and then eastbound from the Gowanus up towards the Brooklyn Bridge. Here's what you need to know about the bridges and tunnels. The East River crossings are all looking good. The George, the Lincoln, the Holland, they are running smoothly. And here's what we see on Long Island's Big Three. There is an accident on the LIE eastbound at Half Hollow Road. That is just before Deer Park Road, slowing things down. No problems with the northern or the southern state, but in Hicksville, a couple of problems. There's an accident at Old Country Road at South Oyster Bay Road, and then a disabled at Duffy Avenue in Charlotte. So use some caution in both of those areas. Patty Bendina, 1010 wins on 92.3 FM.
Now let's get into your official 1010 wins AccuWeather forecast with meteorologist John Ferrick.
Dangerous, potentially life-threatening cold out there for tonight.